Now, the trouble with money. Money is probably the thing that consumes the most of our thoughts, energy, and time. We'd like to say, and maybe as we mature into different places in life, it becomes less, but we would like to say that it's not, but it is the thing that consumes the most of our thoughts, our energy, and our times, especially in more developed areas of the world, like where we aren't so concerned with our immediate everyday needs. We don't have to necessarily spend our time working in the garden growing our food. Now, you may work in the garden, but it's not something that is, you don't have to do that here in America in order to survive. So it's not like you have to go hunt and gather your food and go fetch your water. These things come to us because of money that we have, that God has blessed us with. So we've been on that Be on Purpose series that we've started, and we've got a couple more. Next week will be marriage. The following week will be children, and then the final, we'll close it off with another just all-encompassing sermon. Today we're going to go with Be on Purpose with your money. Be on purpose with your money. So we'll have three more after today: marriage, children, and then another just kind of all-encompassing, closing the series out. So that'll give us a total of 9 that I told you we would have. And my voice is a little bit weak. I don't know. I guess it's kind of started last week, but it's been odd this week. I don't know if I strained my vocal cords or something. I'm not sure. So I'll do my best. I don't know how long I'll make it today, but we'll try to push it out there. Be on purpose with our money. And this isn't going to be one of those, we've had our Dave Ramsey kind of learn how to budget talks, and we can do that another time. That's not necessarily what this is going to be about. It's about our relationship with money in our lives. Now, the trouble with money. Money is probably the thing that consumes the most of our thoughts, energy, and time. We'd like to say, and maybe as we mature into different places in life, it becomes less, but we would like to say that it's not, but it is the thing that consumes the most of our thoughts, our energy, and our times, especially in more developed areas of the world, like where we aren't so concerned with our immediate everyday needs. We don't have to necessarily spend our time working in the garden growing our food. Now, you may work in the garden, but it's not something that is, you don't have to do that here in America in order to survive. So it's not like you have to go hunt and gather your food and go fetch your water. These things come to us because of money that we have, that God has blessed us with here. But so especially here, money consumes our thoughts more than just our basic needs for survival. But if we extend the idea of money to include possessions or just gain beyond what is, absolutely necessary for survival. We got to have food, we got to have shelter, we got to have certain things necessary for survival. But if we need a little more land, if we need a little more, whatever, we need a few more cars, or we need whatever, we need another house or another apartment, we need another something, then there has to be some conversation in your head as to what's driving that. So I think we get the idea that money and or possession consumes a good bit of our being. So you're trying to establish the groundwork here of how much time you actually spend, how much energy you actually spend either in the pursuit of money or the things that money and or riches or possessions can provide. We want more stuff, so generally we have to make more money. That's just the way the law goes. You want more stuff, it costs money, you got to go get it. Unless you got a sword and you go conquer it, right? So, or we have wanted so much stuff that we actually can't afford stuff, so we went into debt with credit cards and loans. You know, I got to have the brand new TV, I got to have the brand new car, I got to have the big house, I got to have the nice yard, I've got to do all these things, and I don't have the money to do those things, so I go get credit cards and I start borrowing money to do these things. So we get the attitude that we don't earn enough money. That's what happens. So we want a lot of stuff, so we got to work to get a lot of stuff. And if we don't have the income to get the stuff that we think we deserve, then we go get loans and credit cards and things to get the stuff, because it's an American right. You should have these things. It's a natural right. It's a human right. You should have these things that are beyond the necessity of your living. Well, you know, I deserve that. You probably don't deserve it, and you're probably not managing your money properly. So instead of going into debt, instead of borrowing money, instead of living beyond your means, you should address your budget and say, I need to live within this context until I'm more capable of affording those things. But generally what happens is we get this attitude that we don't have enough money. We don't earn enough money. That's the conversation I've had a lot of times. Someone makes a certain amount of money and they make X amount of money, but they're trying to live on a Z budget. So X amount of money isn't going to get it. Well, I need to make Z amount of money. Well, no, what you need to do is live on X amount of money until you've earned enough to be the Z person. But that's not the way things go. I don't make enough money. So we stress over getting a job that pays more. I got to have a higher paying job. I've got to charge more for this. I've got to go earn money here. I've got to work all the extra overtime I can get to have more money to provide for the things that I want and need. So we work tons of overtime. Or we make it so mothers can't stay home with their children anymore if they want to, you know. But we've created a society where, because of all the stuff that we think we have to have, you know, all of the excess, the housing has gone up, because housing needs are way different than when some of you tell the stories about when you built your first houses. They were very simple. Well, housing is not very simple anymore, and we have electricity, and we have cell phones, and we have all these extra expenses. Now, are they necessary? Some of them are, and some of them are luxuries. But what happens is we think the luxuries are necessities, and I deserve them, so then I've got to make more money. But it just creates this stress. You know, it's all this is driven by our desire to have more. Desire to have more. So when we want more and we have to go earn more, then more stress and more anxiety comes with that. Well, I got to pay the electric bill, but I really want to go to the movies. I got to pay the electric bill when I want to go out with my friends. You know, or, you know, my car payment's due, but I want to go to the beach for a week. You know, so all these things, our desire to have more drives us into this anxiety that I don't have enough money. You do have enough money. God has provided for you. We'll get into that. We got to have better houses, better cars, more cars. It's not just enough. So every house, there was a time when all my girls were living at home, they thought I had a used car lot. Well, previously to that, I was lucky to have one junker car in the driveway, right? So I don't necessarily have a lot of cars, but you do. One isn't enough, so you got to have two. You got to have two cars because both people have to have a car. And then, well, I've got a car and a truck, but I need another car to get me to work because my truck's too expensive to drive to work. So in this balance of I need more and more and more. And not only that, boy, you know, I don't want a radio you got to turn the dial on. I want the digital push button thing to where I can have the best of the best. We have this idea that we deserve, and I'm not against luxury. I'll talk about myself here in a minute. But I'm not against luxury, but it's about whether or not you should have it or you can afford to have it and where your priorities lie. We want more toys, you know. I'm not saying I never will, but I've never owned a four-wheeler or a side-by-side. A lot of times I'm walking around carrying stuff, and man, I'd really like to have a side-by-side right now, you know. But two things, probably God kept me alive by not allowing me to have one. Amen. And two, I've never been able to really afford one that I thought it was necessary to have one. So we want more toys. I mean, I'd love to have, you know, the new Xbox Series X with the new game, and I'd like to do that, but I just haven't been able to pull my wallet out and buy that thing. You know, something that I enjoy, so I want it. I said, oh, I'd like to have that, or a new bow, or a new gun, you know, Frisbees. No, I'm just picking on you. We want more and more entertainment. Here's where it really boils down for me. More and more entertainment. This one hits me pretty hard because I love to be entertained. Just grew up in a generation where we had TV, and I just like it. I watch the news, you know. These young people don't watch the news. Us old people watch the news, but the young people don't even know what. If it's not on Facebook, then it didn't happen. You know, they don't know what's going on. And if you're not on Facebook, I don't know how they figure out what's going on. Someone at work told me something happened, but they don't. Like, I read the newspaper and I'm watching the news, and like I like to be entertained. So I don't have my phone with me. I always kidded with you guys about you know, the dream was always to have the big TV to watch football games. And I do watch the big TV with the football games. But I used to have...
He owes me $10. I told him that's where you were going with it.
But now we watch TV. Sometimes the big TV over here. Here's how it is for me now. See, I got all the access to football games and football season. So you got the big TV, and then if I've got a game there, I got the phone. We all got our phones going on with the second game, and the phones are ringing in church and everything else. And but you got all this going on. I love to be entertained. You think about it. I personally, and I know some of you guys did too, went from 3 channels. And you go out and turn the antenna, and some of us remember the antenna being frozen in the ground. You take a pot of hot water out there to thaw out the antenna so you can turn it. 3 channels. Then I went to satellite TV. Now to every online streaming service available. You know, you can find it. Well, you can't find anything on because you're always searching for it. We have access to so many movies and so much. And when I was a kid, this would have been a dream world. And now you're just like, what am I going to watch? There's a million things to watch. And you're like, I don't know, nothing's worth watching. But here's the interesting thing. I recently discovered that my favorite thing in the world, see, on Netflix or Amazon Prime, when you select a program, you watch that program, and if you don't want to watch that program, you got to go back out to the menu and select something else. Oh, this is going to be such a retro thing. When we got YouTube TV, I can now use the flipper to flip the channels. I can go back to flipping the channels. Now, some of the old people are looking at me funny because they don't understand. But the young people are like, why would you get enjoyment out of flipping channels? Used to be a thing. You just flip through the channels till you found something on. You flip, 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 flip. Now I got my thumb wore out from flipping these channels. Because on the other streaming services, you don't do that. You have to go back and forth, and it's a laborious process. So that's old retro stuff there. And the point of this is to say we're never satisfied. You know, my first little TV that I had was a little black and white TV, and you know, now we all have probably more than one TV, and we have access to all this entertainment, and we still can't find anything that satisfies us. We're still flipping channels. See, you're never satisfied. And that's my example. You have your own examples. You have your own examples about whatever your entertainment is, or whatever your drive is, your job, your hobbies. See, the trouble with money is that it can be a major distraction and a stressful companion. Every few months in this country, we go through this supposed crisis over a national budget. And we're going through it right now. This weekend and in the next few days, you're going to hear about a government shutdown. That's all you're going to hear about. Every few months we go through this crisis. It's a crisis that the government's going to shut down, and we got to pass a continuing resolution, or we got to get a budget, and they never do. The United States is $33 trillion in debt. $33 trillion in debt. and the members of the Congress fail to agree on a balanced budget. My research says that we haven't had a balanced budget since 2001. Can you imagine the last time you balanced your checkbook? We talked about balancing checkbooks on a Wednesday night here the other day, and how difficult it is if things aren't coming in properly, how to balance. If you didn't balance your checkbook for 20 couple years, you'd be in prison somewhere. They just kick the ball down the road over and over with these continuing resolutions. And what these continuing resolutions do, so instead of passing a budget and the government says, well, we can only spend this amount of money, they say, well, we'll pass a continuing resolution that's going to allow us to spend more money than we actually have. That's what that does. So every few months, they pass a continuing resolution that just allows them to kick the ball down the road without ever passing a real budget. It'd be like you saying, well, I know, I'm only going to earn $1,000, but I'm going to say I can spend $1,500. And that's what they do, so you continue gaining in this debt. And they threaten that if they don't do these things, the government will shut down. Well, for the most part, none of us would ever know if the government did shut down. Because all the things that are necessary to keep the country running are going to stay afloat, and all the excess is going to shut down. Now that would be damaging to those people who have these government jobs and things like that, but for the most part it wouldn't be that big of a deal if it did shut down. And maybe it would spur them on to do something. And you can see just how stressful this gets and how much time it consumes. They can't do anything else in Congress because they're worried about passing these resolutions. And there's way more to it than that. But what I'm trying to get in front of you is the stress and the energy around money. Because properly managed, it is a wonderful tool. Properly managed, money can be a wonderful tool. But improperly managed or improperly pursued, it's like a noose around your neck. In a 2022 article on healthline.com, it stated that 87% of people surveyed stressed about inflation because your dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. I didn't look up what the value is, but your dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. Stuff costs more. Cars are going to be more expensive. Food is more expensive. All these things have went up probably about 20% if you really look at the figures. CNBC reports that 77% of Americans are anxious over their financial situation. So you've got a government financial situation, you've got inflation, and inflation comes because the government spends too much money and or prints more money, and it weakens the value, it weakens the strength of your actual dollar. So that, combined with 77% of Americans are anxious over their financial situation. 3 out of every 4 people are concerned about their financial situation. They either have created too much debt, they're living beyond their means, maybe because there are people who actually just don't make enough money, and they live in a position where they need to make more money. Maybe there's something keeping them from making more money. Maybe they can't get employed. Maybe they have some reason for not. So there's all sorts of reasons around that, but can you imagine that 3 out of every 4 people are concerned? It's a stressful thing, and it creates, I had other statistics, I didn't pull them out, but it creates all this anxiety and anxiousness and mental health disorders, and by that creates physical problems in you. When you're stressed and anxious, then your blood pressure's up and you gain weight and you can't sleep, and it just spills over from one thing to the next. A significant amount of people worry over money either daily or weekly. Living paycheck to paycheck, but it's a little more than that. It's a little more than worrying about it over the course of time. We worry over it. We pursue it, money. In America, we roughly spend about a third of our time sleeping, a third of our time actually working, and then a third of our time generally is free. But that free time is often spent traveling to and from work or preparing for work. And so you can see the need and pursuit of money steals away other valuable items in our existence. Our time, our work, and people probably tired of hearing me say it all the time, that whether you have a job or you start a business or whatever, the main ingredient to that is discipline. So that you know that especially if you have a family, that you have to spend time with the family, because that is really where your true wealth is held. In the people around you. Not in the items that you possess, not in the things that you can buy, not in the power and the prestige from the position or the money that you acquire. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to care about that. How many rich people have you seen die that nobody talks about how many dollars they have, but who the people are that they left behind? Nobody cares. Ecclesiastes talks about, the rich man built up all this wealth, I'm paraphrasing, builds up all this wealth, and the next generation squanders it away. You can look around at people who have built nice possessions or built nice bank accounts, and their sons or their grandsons or daughters and granddaughters have squandered it away. The houses fall down, the bank accounts go empty. Nobody cares about that at the end of the day. But they will remember the lineage of that family and who that family is, who you raised, what people you created. Steals away our time and our health. Stress over money is a big contributor to a negative feeling of happiness and satisfaction. We want to believe that money can bring satisfaction. That's what we want to believe. Even us Christian folk want to believe that money brings satisfaction, even though we know by the Scriptures that it doesn't. We know by the Scriptures tell us over and over again that there's only one way to satisfaction, and that's through Jesus Christ to the Father Himself. That's it. But we still have these desires for money because we still have stresses over money. We need to pay a bill. We need to pay for a surgery. We need to go to the dentist. We need to do these things, and we don't have the money to do them, and we suffer for it. We suffer inside of ourselves for it, even if it's not a real suffering. A study involving Purdue University, published in 2018, indicated that in America, to have a satisfactory, happy life, an individual needed to earn $105,000 a year. The average salary at that time was $58,000. Of course, that's going to change depending on where you live, but I think it shows that happiness in money is a lofty target. See, now I know a lot of us have lived on far less than that. A lot of us have lived, our households haven't made that much money, a lot of us, in a year. We live in an area where it doesn't take quite as much to live. Our rent isn't the same as it is in New York City, things like that. So I understand a lot of us have lived on far less than that. And a lot of us have learned to live within our means and be satisfied with the things that we have. But that's what this survey indicated. It was a global survey, but just narrowing it down to the American portion of it. They surveyed American people, and to have the things they want and to have the items that they want and to be truly happy would take $105,000 a year, and everybody was only making an average of $58,000 a year. So it's happiness in money is a lofty target that likely isn't going to fill the voids that are present in your life. So if you have an idea that you're going to, these young people who are starting out in life, that you're going to get a job that's going to pay you enough to allow you to be happy, it just isn't going to happen. And even if you do get a job that's going to pay those things, there's still going to be areas of your life that are incomplete. So maybe you make $150 a year, maybe you make all the money that you need to make, but that's not where true happiness is defined. And that's where the survey probably lacks. Whose money is it anyway? We are stewards of His money. If we learn to be satisfied with God and view everything that is produced aside from that as a benefit, we will be much happier in our everyday walk. If we learn to be satisfied with God, stop. If we learn to be satisfied with God, God has provided for me. I woke up this morning. He gave me legs. My voice is struggling, but I'm still able to communicate. He gave me shelter. I didn't have to stand in the rain all day yesterday. I'm not cold because He gave me the ability to have heat. He gave me tons of blessings. And if I can be satisfied with the things that He provides, then I'll be able to look at everything else and say, what a blessing. Not only did God give me shelter, not only did God give me food, He also allowed me to have a nice vehicle to drive. He also allowed me to take my wife on a date. He also allowed me these other benefits. God allowed those things for me. He took care of my needs and gave me more. So listen to this. Listen to this about John Wesley. John Wesley was determined not to be of the same poor financial stature as his parents. He later went on to teach at Oxford University and later be elected as a fellow of Lincoln College. Initially, John seemed to splurge his newfound wealth, spending his money on card games, tobacco, and brandy. One day at Oxford, an event happened that changed his perspective on money. Charles Edward White describes it this way. Wesley had just finished paying for some pictures for his room when one of the chambermaids came to his door. It was a cold winter day, and he noticed that he had nothing to protect her. She had nothing to protect her except a thin linen gown. He reached into his pocket to give her some money to buy a coat, but found he had too little left. Immediately, the thought struck him that the Lord was not pleased with the way he had spent his money. He asked himself, "Will thy master say, 'Well done, good and faithful steward'? Thou hast adorned thy walls with the money which might have screened this poor creature from the cold. O justice, O mercy, are not these pictures the blood of this poor maid?" So Wesley had squandered his money and wasn't able to help someone in need. And it convicted him to the point where he said, would God be pleased with me right now? Would He say, "Well done, good and faithful servant"? He decided no, God would not be pleased. And I've related this to you before. At the beginning of his ministry, he gave 2% and kept 98%. By the end of his ministry, because of that conviction, he gave away 98% and kept 2%. Because he continued to live within his means. And when he got a raise, he didn't view it as a raise. He continued to give that much more money away. He lived within what was necessary. Ecclesiastes 5:19. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. It is not our money. It is His. It's not our money. We have a responsibility to manage it. And we can all look and say, and look, if you're in debt and you're not free of debt, you should not be putting money in the offering plate. Now, I understand people have a conviction to give to God and give to the church, but you haven't managed properly, and you're not in a position to serve properly because you owe someone else, and effectively, someone else owns you. You understand that? If you borrow money from the bank, you are a slave to the bank. You're a slave to the master. So that should be a conviction. I want to give money. I want to put money in the plate. Or I want to give to this charity. Or I'd love to take care of that person over there. But I also owe the bank and owe this person and owe the credit card company. And you start tallying up the debts and you say, whew, I shouldn't give because I owe these other people, and I need to clear that out of the way so I can serve God completely and fully. That's why I try to tell people, be debt free. For no other reason, if we take our Dave Ramsey lessons and we apply those things, and for no other reason that we would want to be debt free, that we can serve God fully with nothing else in our way. No other distractions. No one else has any claim over me, right? So I can use my money appropriately in His charge, in the way that He would want me to do it. We have a responsibility to manage His money and use it to bring Him glory. That should be the conviction. It's not your money, it's His money. And you should use it to bring Him glory. If you have an excess beyond what you think is necessary, it should be used to bring God glory. Is what I am doing with my money pleasing to God? That's the question that should be in your heart. Is what I am doing with my money pleasing to God? And this isn't to put some grand conviction on you that you could never buy yourself a soda at the store, right? It's not that. It's that you know that you have been responsible with the money, and you have used it in a way that brings God glory, and you don't have any guilt over picking up a soda because God allowed you to have that soda or whatever. That's just one example. Philippians 4:19. And my God will supply every need of yours according to His riches in glory in Christ Jesus. And my God will supply every need of yours according to His riches in glory in Christ Jesus. We can give generously in faith, knowing that our needs will be met. If His eye is on the sparrow, then it's certainly on me. If He keeps the birds in the sky from falling out of the sky, if He feeds the birds of the sky, then He will feed me. He will take care of me. Oh, we just can't leave it all to chance. I'm not. I'm giving it to God. I am not leaving it to chance. And I'm not telling you to leave it to chance. I'm not telling you to take all your money and give it away and say, God will take care of me. That's foolish. That's foolish. He doesn't tell you to do that, and neither am I. I've often shared this story about my grandma Ruby, who was, her husband died when they were young, and she was left with all these little babies and young children to take care of. And she faithfully went to church, and she faithfully put her money in the offering plate. And what she says to me is, I always paid my tithes, I always gave, I always paid my tithes, and my refrigerator was never empty. And I'm telling you, I'm sure she had a hard time. But God never left her. She was faithful to Him. She was committed to Him. And when she saw that her refrigerator was not empty, that she always had something to eat, she knew God was taking care. She didn't give the credit to someone down the road. She didn't give credit to the government. She knew God was taking care of her. And even today, I have a recording of her on my phone when we got to, I think she met Heidi. And we're all out there talking with her about Heidi. And she says, she relates that she never had much, but she was the richest person for all the family she had around her. That God blessed her with such a great big family.
Yes.
And that's where the true value is. And that's why I try to build this thing around me and get out to my friends and tell them to build that family. That's where true value is found. 1 Timothy 6:10. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evils. Not money itself, but the love of money. The love of money. You know people who have just pursued and pursued and pursued. They got a bigger job and a better job and just not for need or not for necessity, but just to have power, just to have the glory on them. That's the root of all kind of evil, because it pulls you away and pierces you with all sorts of pangs. Because you can't be satisfied. Money didn't satisfy you, and you couldn't buy enough toys to satisfy you. So, and instead of turning to God, because why would you? You have it all, right? So a lot of people, instead of turning to God, they turn away and they go to drugs and alcohol and whatever other kind of distraction they can have because they're not satisfied. Money itself isn't to blame, but it's this thing inside of us that calls to want more and more and more of a thing. And it doesn't have to be money. It can be possession. It can be land. It can be houses. It can be any type of thing that just you got to get more and more and more of it. You know, those of you who've been through the Dave Ramsey classes, he starts that thing out talking about a brick. You know, money itself isn't evil. The same as a brick can either be good or bad. A brick can be used to build a hospital or an orphanage, or it can be used to be thrown through the window. So the brick is not the cause. The brick is, you know, it doesn't have any value in the story. It's the person, what the person does with the brick. The same way with money. What are you doing with it? And is the question ringing inside of you, is God pleased with me? Is God pleased with what I'm doing with the money that He's given me? Where will we invest our money and our possessions? Will it be to build me up more? To make me more glorious? You. Will it be used to say, I'm better than you because I have a bigger house. I'm better than you because I have more money. I'm better than you because I have better clothing. And we all know people like that. We know people like that within our own midst sometimes who pop their collars and think that they're better than you because they live a different lifestyle than you. And they can't imagine why you live in the way that you do. And they don't understand their own blessings. They don't understand the gifts that they've been given. And they're not applying those things properly to bring God glory. Will these ways that we invest our money, will our possessions, will our money, will our drive keep us from the promised land like the rich young ruler? Remember, the rich young ruler says, oh, I've kept all the law. I'm good. I've kept all the law. And Jesus said, get rid of all your stuff and follow me. He said, whoa, can't do that. Not leaving my stuff behind. Do you own something today? If you were required to leave your home, if you were required to leave your bank account and go where He called you, could you go? Could you go? Oh, some of us can say, yeah, we're not tied to our possessions. And some of us would be like, struggling. God wants me to go somewhere. God's calling me to go somewhere. God has separated me from my possessions and my money and my stuff and has asked me to go. Can you leave it all behind and go? That's your rich young ruler story. Or can we learn to view it without consequence to our satisfaction of life? It doesn't really matter what we have. You know, and we talked about last week in time. Time moves so fast. Standing here at 47 thinking about my grandbabies will be 15 and I'll be 62 that fast. And why am I going to spend my time worried and consumed about how much I can gain when that time will bypass me so quickly I won't even know what happened? And I'll look back and say, I wish I would have. I mean, how many more times would you like to spend fishing with your sons or taking your daughter to the movies or whatever? Does that not have a greater value because my children have now gone out, so the times that I get to spend with them are lesser? Isn't that of a greater value than how many paychecks I can put in the bank? By far. Listen to what Paul says. Philippians chapter 4, verses 12 and 13. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. Paul says, I know how to live with little, and I know how to live with much. In every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. He's comfortable in either path. He's comfortable whether God has placed him on top of the mountain or in the bottom of the pit, which he often was in the bottom of the pit. He can be comfortable. How can he do that? The next verse. And it's often misquoted. But I can do all things through him who strengthens me. It's not about what I can accomplish through him. It's about what he gets me through. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. You see someone with Philippians 4:13, sports figures, or someone who's using that as a motivation to go conquer more and more, probably out of context. Probably means I can make it through this world. I can survive. Because God, whether he gives me little or gives me much, has provided everything I need. He's given me eternal life. I'm going to get a reward. If I give everything away and I depend on him, I'm going to get a reward. If I die penniless on this earth, I'm going to wake up in the riches of my Father's house. And that's how I live, with little or much. And that's, we think about, how am I investing myself in this life? All of these lessons we've had about being on purpose. How am I investing myself? My time, my money, my possessions, my study, all of my being. How am I investing it? Is he satisfied with me? Is he going to say, well done, good and faithful servant? All of these things we've been talking about boil down to that. Is God pleased with how I'm doing things? Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day. And we're just so overwhelmed with the blessings that you've put before us. We're so thankful that you have just given us so much, that you heat our homes and you provide shelter for us as we see the seasons change. We don't have to wonder how we'll make it through winter, because you have faithfully brought us through time and time again. That you've surrounded us with people who love us and care for us, that will lift us up if we are in need. We just appreciate you so much, and we love you, and we just want to be drawn closer and closer to you. We want to have the gift of discernment. We want you to give it to us all the more, that we can take your word with wisdom and in knowledge to those around us, that they might hear and that they might bend their knee and that they might worship you. And we just ask that you would call us back together again on Wednesday and on Sunday, that we can sing songs of praise to you and worship you and lay our petitions at your feet. And we ask all these things in Jesus' most wonderful name. Amen.